So hi, this is the Drupal usability meeting for December 18th, 2018, and this is highly likely the last meeting of the year because the next two meetings would fall on December 25th and January 1st. So the next one will probably be January 8th, later next year. And Benji brought in an issue about validation errors.
Hello, I think I'm unmuted and sharing my screen.
Yeah.
So this is issue number 2563173. Display required validation errors for form elements that do not provide a title. So here I have a fresh install of Drupal 8.7 with the umami theme, and I have a form. It's labeled broken form, but actually at the moment it's not broken. This input element is required, and it does have a title key, so you can see the title up here, enter text or else, with a little asterisk to indicate that it's required. And if I foolishly ignore the instructions and just submit, I get this error message. Enter text or else field is required, and the field is highlighted. Actually, in order to get that error message, I first had to install the disable HTML5 validation module. So anyway, this is sort of a belt and suspenders thing where normally we recommend that sites use HTML5 validation, but what if they don't? What happens? So that's if the form is not broken. Let me just do a quick edit on the module that provides that form. So I'm commenting out the line that provides the title, and I'm changing the description. So now if I reload the page, this input element is required, and it has no title key, and there's no label for the form thing up here, just the description. And now if I try to submit, I get this unhelpful error message, just the red X, which and the field is outlined in red. But if it were a long form and that were not above the fold, you might miss the red outline on the text field, and this would be your only indication with no text and no link to go to the page. So that is on a fresh install on Drupal 8.7. Here's another fresh install of umami where I've applied the latest patch from the issue. Again, the input file is required. It has no title key. And now if I submit, now I get a sort of default error message. A required field was not filled out. And other than that, it's pretty much the same. So that's what the patch does. And I've read the first few comments on the issue, and the last couple, it was the last comment that added the request for a usability review. And they're just asking for what to use for the default error message text in this case. And Alex Pott wrote that that text implies that a field needs to be filled out, even though the field might be a checkbox or a select box. And also suggests that here, instead of using the past tense was not filled out, it suggests that you use the current tense and recommends a required field is empty. And there's another problem in the review, but that's not related to usability specifically. So I guess the only question here from a UX point of view is, do we agree with Alex Pott's recommendation to change this default text?
I agree with Alex that the text needs to change, but empty is like a programmer term. Empty. Do people know what empty means? That's my only, like a required field is missing. Empty. I guess, what do you guys think? I just consider we all think empty because of PHP.
I think empty is also common English usage, and what are the options? Blank, blank like not filled out makes sense for a text field, but
Yeah.
for a radio button or checkbox or select list, it's not so good.
And missing isn't right because that seems weird. It's probably fine. I was just throwing that one thing out. I mean, a required field is missing, empty, blank. Blank isn't totally right because it's a checkbox.
Or perhaps we should sort of give positive direction. You must enter something for the unspecified field.
Yeah, but where? Yeah, how do you specify that?
Yeah. Oh, and we have 2 more people joining us.
So what happens if there's multiple of these fields that don't have a title? Then what, the same message would be displayed?
I don't know. Would you like me to explain?
I kind of know. Yeah. No, the same message will be displayed, but we'll also need to factor in the inline error module, which what it does at the top is there's an error with, and it gives you the name of the fields. And then that message, a required field was not filled out, would be below this input in red with the, the little red circle with the X on it. If you turn on the inline error validation, what is it called? Inline errors module?
Inline form errors, yeah.
Yeah, inline form errors.
Inline underscore form underscore errors?
Yeah.
I think so, yeah.
And if you want, I can edit my my module and create a second problematic form field.
Yeah, because if it's displayed twice, that's confusing. If it's displayed, if it says a required field and there's multiple fields, that's also a problem. Yeah, that's another consideration. Because that makes, that also informs what the text should be, depending on how it behaves.
Sorry about that. Did you get the message to pop?
Just a moment. So let's see. Okay, I've enabled inline form errors on both. And now I should have 2 fields. So this is with the patch. And how come I'm not seeing it? Do I need to clear caches? What are you telling me on Slack?
I'm giving you the snippet to disable the inline form. Like, you have the module on, but there's a property that you can put on the form to disable them. So you don't have to keep turning you don't have to keep turning the module on and off.
Okay. Oops.
It's a main form property.
Right. I suppose I should also have that on both copies of my site. Okay. Maybe that's maybe I didn't need clear caches. Maybe I was just looking at the wrong copy of the site. So now I've done a few things. I've added a second form element. I have enabled that the inline form errors, but then I added this key to the form. So again, this is the unpatched site. I get a single red X, and then both fields are outlined in red. Here's the patched site. And this time I get the message just once.
I'm probably missing some context because I joined a little late, but like what would be the most helpful is to tell people what fields they need to fill out. So it'd be like, please provide a blah, 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 please provide a blah, 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 or something like that, you know? Because just telling me there's a required form field missing doesn't help me if the form is like 27 form elements long. Yeah. And it also seems to be lying to me right now because it's telling me I have a required field missing. I actually have two.
Angie, the issue here is like a bigger issue in the form API where the title property is not required. So developers have been able to create form elements that don't have that descriptive element, like that title, to say what it is. And when there's an error on it,
name or something we could report, right?
There's nothing on it to look for. There's no like translatable string associated with the element.
No, I understand that.
Yeah.
But in this case, we could say like, whatever the machine name is of the field, we could display that, which is useless in most cases, but it might give someone half of a clue. I don't know.
Yeah, I do that in web form, to be honest. Like I 100% implemented it that way. Like, because I think the key has something, but it's not translatable, so it creates a whole other can of worms. Okay, so that's the inline errors.
Yeah, that's better, and that at least you know where the problem took place. So the specific problem is we have one or more form fields that do not have a translatable label on them, yet are marked required, and someone didn't fill them out and needs to be pointed in the right direction as far as where to go. And just a blank X is not the right thing, which I totally agree with that. That looks like I'm bugged.
So maybe there should be a link in the error message to the right place on the page, a page fragment link to take you down there. But that seems to me would be out of scope for this issue.
Yeah, the issue there is the inline form errors does exactly that, except it uses the title of the element as the link, which is why it's broken here. It's not generating the typical message, which is like these fields are required, and then there's a comma delimited list of linked titles to each element to get you there. And because that's missing, the inline form errors module is not going to format one. Can you put a title on one of them?
Yes.
Yeah, let's see. It should.
So this is the unpatched version of the site. Over here, okay. So that presumably will scroll me to the one. Yeah. Well, I guess it's because of the admin menu that it scrolls a little too far. So maybe that then is in scope, that if the inline form errors module is enabled, it should somehow produce this link. Do you think that's feasible?
We don't have a ident, like what's the label of the link? That's
Right, I guess that that fragment goes to =4 equals class equal input. I'm kind of not seeing. Description. I'm not seeing it. Where? That's the whole form.
so I want to. I mean, I feel like we have the inline form errors. It's going to be very hard having no labels. So it's almost like the solution they've come up with is we've got to pick a generic message. It just says there's a problem with the form and you can't, and there's required fields. And maybe not saying a field is required, but just saying this form contains one or more required fields that must be, filled out or not empty. I don't know what the right, but maybe to just have a message that's on the global scale addressing the form. Not because the default message they're working with is, I think a field is required.
Well, the current patch says a required field is not filled out.
But what if there's more than one field? Then it gets confusing. And if it's the same message over and over again, I don't think they'll display multiple times, or we wouldn't want to keep saying a required field was not filled out.
Right, and in fact, it does show up only once.
So just, do we think a generic, this form contains one or more required fields that have not been submitted or entered as a catch-all for whether it's one, two, or three fields?
I guess that's better than what we're currently looking at, yeah, because then it covers the multiple case. It still doesn't tell the user anything. Like the user has to painstakingly scan the entire form, trying to find where the field is. The field might be behind a vertical tab somewhere. You know what I mean? Like it's really hard. It'd be much better if we could give them anything.
Well, the right solution is for the developer to put a title on the form field.
Well,
Yeah, I guess if
and that's included in the ticket.
then this won't happen, right?
Right. If there's a title, then this does not happen.
Yeah. And it can't happen in Field API. Like most, web forms requires a title. Field API requires a title. It's when a developer is writing a form in code. And they're including in the PR throwing an error, like an exception, not a warning when the title is missing from any form API element, because it's also an accessibility issue.
Mm-hmm.
Christina, what do you think? I'm not really sure either. Yeah. So the only thing that I'm sure, or at least, yeah, the only thing that I'm pretty sure is what you were saying, that it doesn't give too much information, and at least what you were saying before about using this multiple one or multiple fields or something like that is better than this. And I'm not really sure what's the best solution here.
Wait a minute. This this blank field has a name attribute.
Yeah, that's a machine name.
Can't a name attribute be used as a fragment identifier?
So I feel bad suggesting this, but we do have one piece of metadata about the required field. It's what type it is. And we don't have, in core, we don't have a way to know that a text, like how'd you put it, a translatable string to say a text field is required. But that would help the user experience on this. So if there was like radio buttons and someone didn't enter it, it could say radio buttons, you know, there are radio buttons that are required, and at least that's something. It's a lot of work for something that only happens if someone writes bad code. Like we'd have to add translatable strings to all the form API element types to the plugins.
Yeah, at least all types that we can identify. Yeah.
Yeah, and most people use those standard types. It's very, you know, it's 20 types off the top of my head that, you know, because yeah, and they're easy to detect. It's just a lot of work for. I feel like that would be a follow-up if someone wanted, you know, to make it perfect, but.
And then I guess the message would be different. So, so if there's more than one field, you would get more than one field of different types, then you get more than one message, right?
Yeah, and if it's and then the message could, I mean, technically speaking, the message could be more specific, because you can say a checkbox is required. You know, a checkbox must be checked. A radio button must be checked. Text field must be filled out. Yeah.
And all of this to provide a backstop to people not doing it right.
Yeah. Where the most important thing in the PR is the fact that they're going to trigger an error when pound title is missing. You know, so the developers will start catching that if they have the machine set up correctly.
And Angie has left us.
I mean, just to walk through, I'm just going to recap the issues, because it's just like, if inline form validation errors is off, the message will be displayed at the top and will not repeat. If form inline errors is turned on, the message will be displayed at the top and displayed under the element without a link to the missing field. Let's use field. If we pick a generic message, then that would be, if we said something like, this form has required fields that must be filled out, that would be displayed below every element that's required, which isn't the word, you know. If I was going to go with one message, I like this form has one or more required fields that must be filled, you know, submitted or filled.
Of course, that's already getting kind of long. Like I have 64 characters here, and I couldn't type all of that.
Yeah.
How about
I mean,
enter something for each required field? Is that better or worse? Sounds too bossy. Please. That fits within my 64 character limit. I kind of like that it's telling someone how to solve the problem and not just what the problem is. What do you think?
I think it's better than the existing one, and it stands out because it's different. Because the other syntax is, what's the default? It's like, oh, enter name field is required, and to change the syntax around, they'll make it stand out a little bit more, which is good.
And I guess the default text is sort of passive voice. The current one, a required field, was not filled out. Alex's suggestion was a required field is empty. I guess that's not passive voice. It's still the imperative voice. Do something. I kind of like. So shall we recommend this text here?
Yeah, I mean, the only alternative, and boy, we're nitpicking this one, is it could be, you could do, just like, please enter something for required fields with S in parentheses, because this text is going to be displayed where the enter text or else field is required.
Down here.
Yeah, so please enter something for each required field that's being displayed below a single required field.
Are you sure? Wait a minute.
Maybe for the missing required fields, or no, maybe not. I don't know. I don't know.
All right. Okay. So yes, with the patch, whatever generic message we use does get put below each field if we have inline form errors.
Yeah, which makes it very awkward because that's the required field that you didn't fill out, and it's not a required field, and it's also not some required, or each required field is also not good for that. So this is may need a different message for it based on what form error displays we have, but we don't have a support for that.
Yeah, so currently we get the same text at the top of the page and for each field.
Well, that's why if you do parentheses, or what is it? Please enter something for required field, parenthesis, S, period. Kind of covers all instances of where this text will appear. And we do use parenthesis S in core. You know what I say when we do use that pattern in some places in core.
I actually think that my phrasing works well here. even if it gets repeated. And I think that making the parentheses S, it makes it worse if it's appearing beneath each field. That's so bad.
It's better. It's a lot better than what the original text. I mean, I'm fine with it. That's my vote.
Sorry. Is it better or worse than Alex's suggestion? A required field is empty. I think a required field looks very odd when it's put underneath the field. And also doesn't allow for the possibility that there's more than one. So, I've convinced you? You like my wordsmithing? Christina, you wrote in the chat, passive voice +1. Does that mean that you like using the passive voice, or you agree that it's a bad thing to use passive voice?
Oh, sorry, I was meaning that I liked that. I don't remember exactly what you were saying at that point, but you said something and it sounded better. Okay. But anyway, don't listen to my English suggestions. So go ahead with whatever you feel it's better.
I think it's better when you put in the ticket, just explain. I mean, I also think it's very important. It stands out because it's a different type of structure. Instead of blank is required, it's please enter something, which I think stands out. Something's better than empty, for sure. And it's more direct, yeah.
Okay. So I will add that suggestion. And maybe, Jacob, you can add some things, because I think if I try to remember everything you said, I will certainly not succeed. And now I know what forms look like in the umami theme. I didn't until today. And shall we end the meeting there? I think we have to use the full hour if no one else has anything to talk about.
I'm good. I can wish everyone a happy holidays.
Same here.
Yeah, same here.
See you in 2 weeks.
3 weeks, I think.
3 weeks, yeah.
3 weeks, yeah.
3 weeks is January 1st. Well, we can try.
That always happens with the holidays, yeah.
Yeah. Probably not. All right, see you in 3 weeks.
Okay, thank you.
Bye.